Hey folks, and welcome into the BN Cubs podcast. My name is Michael Cerami, and with me as always is Brett Taylor. We're here to talk some Cubs baseball. Thanks to Ankin Law. Howard Ankin and Co. are your people for your injury law needs. 312-6 million, injury law made personal. That's Ankin Law. Actually, I'm laughing about saying it like that because at our Cubs watch party last week, which the Cubs won again. I think we are undefeated at our watch parties, by the way.
Yeah.
Besides the very, very first Bears one. But since then, we've had a bunch. I think we've won every single one. Howard was going around and doing that like commercial with people, which is, I don't know if you've been watching on Marquee or through MLB TV, but he's got one with Carson Kelly. And it's just like the funniest. It's like the funniest, accidentally funny, because it's not definitely funny. He's like, do your teammates call you cars? And he's like, speaking of cars, if you're in an auto accident,
that's like one of my transitions on the podcast.
Yeah.
Like, speaking of talking.
But I am still doing the intro. If you guys notice a twinge to my voice or a little less pep in my step than usual, woke up feeling a little sick, which who gets sick on July 2nd? People with kids. That's who, I suppose. Because they're sick too. And so I will battle through this nonetheless, because Brett, ever since I started taking over, Cubs have been winning.
I'm never going to intro again.
I mean,
Cubs going to carry this through the end of the year.
You know, what's funny is I'm not superstitious. Like, if, gun to my head, I'm like, no, obviously I don't believe that. But anything short of that, I'm like, let's just not change things just because. Like, it's a little hard.
That's it. There are two different things, right? Like believing that you are affecting these things that are happening, right? That's sort of voodoo that I don't necessarily buy, right? My rational mind. But at the same time, do I want to risk being responsible for undoing the good already, just in case? Like when the cost to me is, for example, in this instance, sitting on the sidelines for the intro. No, I'm not going to mess that up.
Yeah, come on. Couldn't possibly. Since our last time talking, the Cubs took 2 of 3 from the Brewers, including one just absolute white knuckle game, the last one of the series, which, maybe we'll go from there. And then they, of course, swept the Padres with an statement exclamation point game to cap off the sweep. But I want to start with just the finale of the Brewers game, because there's a couple things that I wanted to just hit on. And the first is Seiya Suzuki, who in the top of the 10th inning, came through with that just perfect line drive hit that scored a couple runs. And those runs ended up being absolutely critical because the bullpen sort of let the Brewers back into it in the bottom half of that, in that 10th inning there. But I will say, and I wrote this at the time, it was like, a month ago, Seiya Suzuki comes up in that spot and we are like, here we go again. Like, this is 2 outs, bases loaded, key spot. It was just like the definition of him not coming through was exactly, limited to those moments. It seemed like, because he still had some production. It was just that. However, when he came up in that spot, I wasn't surprised that he came through. I actually felt calm going into it because he has looked so much better. And so one thing that I want to talk about, it's funny because he's like the 4th hottest hitter on this team right now. And he's been incredibly hot for a while, is the difference. Because my friends and I were talking about this and I want to get your take on this. A lot of the Cubs players have like sort of a streaky nature to them. Dansby is pretty streaky. PCA is a different story because his streakiness has been like career oriented, not like multiple stretches of it. Ian Happ has some streakiness to his game.
Michael Busch
does too. Now, Seiya Suzuki obviously is very famously streaky. But there's a weird distinction for him because when he is at his best, he doesn't feel like a streaky guy on a hot streak. He looks like such a complete hitter to me that you almost feel like, well, this is a guy who's not going to snap back to a cold stretch again. Because again, like when it's Swanson, it's like, well, to be honest, no, he's not going to hit 5 home runs in 2 games consistently. Like but Suzuki's entire approach and then the nature of his results don't look like the shape of a streaky hitter. So do you have any take on that?
It's funny. The question reminds me of the first week we got to see Seiya Suzuki on the Cubs, and there was something almost inarticulable about how he looked as a hitter, in the way that like sort of the really good, disciplined, well-developed, well-rounded hitters look when a pitch is coming in, as if you can almost see it in their reaction that they see it the whole way, that they're just sort of like, yeah, that's one I want. No, that's one I don't want. And like the way that ended up manifesting in so many conversations those first couple of years with Seiya was like him getting strike three calls on borderline pitches, which was ultimately a byproduct of how disciplined he is at the plate. Like he is a guy who is sometimes to his detriment, incredibly selective at the plate, because he has he pretty clearly, to me, I don't know that he's said this out loud, but like he knows what he's looking for in a given at bat, which is why sometimes he has those really ugly swings and why he has sometimes those really ugly takes, because he knows what he wants to do. Now, to your question, what's funny is when he was in that bad stretch, it seemed like those were happening more often. It seemed like he had the look of someone who was fooled much more often than usual, but I'm really not sure that's ever been the case with him. I think he's wrong sometimes up there, and I think he doesn't always execute how he wants to, like any player. But I think if you really watch him, he is still doing that thing that he's always done, which is exactly what I think is informing your question, which is that he just looks like such a sophisticated hitter up there. And that's almost setting aside the fact that when he really gets a hold of one, I mean, he hits freaking rockets because he is jacked and he has a fast swing, and so I do know what you mean, that it almost feels like when you watch him succeeding like this right now, it's like, how could he ever not succeed? Because this is the kind of success you expect to see from someone who looks like he does at the plate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, like Dansby's stretch has been fun and absurd. And I think you're going to write about it a little bit more today. I already was writing about it yesterday, he hit three more home runs. What are you going to not talk about that? But that feels more like one that will, probably level off and cool off. I am like, I crack up every time I see where he ranks. Like there's a graphic going around, but he's like 7th in home runs among shortstops in the National League all time. And it's like, man, he's got some years left too. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the year is like, if you could have a shortstop with Dansby's defensive qualities, and this year his metrics are actually back up again. They're higher again. He's always looked kind of the same to me, frankly. We've talked about this. I don't know, whatever. But if he's going to hit like 20 homers, and he's going to surpass that this year, most likely, and have like a roughly 100 weighted runs created plus while playing Gold Glove defense and batting 9th, you're like, that's just, what else do you want? Like,
especially in the second half of this contract. It's like, a debate whether he gave the Cubs in the front 2 years or whatever, what they would have wanted. I don't know that they would complain. But we're seeing it. I tweeted about this yesterday because it just kind of came to mind. And I know it's almost neither here nor there at this point, but that shortstop class that he was a part of with Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts, and Trey Turner, he has overall performed the best out of all 4 of them. And this year, as they age, he's performing the best by far out of all of them. And he got the smallest contract out of all of them.
Yep.
Depending on the annual value, how you play with those. But because Correa's was
that's
situation. If people remember, that was sort of a weird situation. And so I think I struggle a little bit with like how much, a guy's numbers even out by the end of the year, but how much does he either get dinged or get plussed when those numbers come like they have for him, where it's literally the worst month of his career stacked up against literally the best 3 weeks of his career. I don't know. Is that Is that better? Is that worse?
No, well, man, I don't know. I got to find who wrote this because it has stuck in my brain for years. I've brought this up to you in the past, even. There was an article on Fangraphs. Genuinely, this was 11 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. Like, it was when we first started working together at the earliest, because it might have even been before that, but it was talking about, and this is with respect to pitchers, but it remains true, that you actually would prefer the high variance guy. Do you remember this?
Yes, yeah. I do remember this.
And so the point there is, like, okay, imagine a player who has 5 starts and you have, 10 runs to distribute among those starts. Well, the best version of that is in one game, he gives up 10 runs, and in the other 4 games, he gives up 0 runs, because if you evenly distribute them, make it 12, you know what I mean? Or whatever you want to do. Then the chances of winning each individual game is like a coin flip or whatever. Whereas the other way, you're like almost guaranteeing 4 wins. Now, I don't think that necessarily applies to offensive players. I think it's a little bit different, but it's a similar principle.
Yeah. I think, and that's what I have been thinking about, is when you have some of these games that Dansby is putting up, certainly the last 2 stand out all the more, but like, that can win a game. I mean, when a guy has 3 hits, including a homer, drives in 5 or whatever, like that's the equivalent of a starting pitcher going 7 scoreless.
Right.
And maybe you would prefer to consolidate those performances in one offensive player, especially because on a given day, when he has the bad days, you've got 8 other hitters to work with, which starting pitcher.
Well, that's why it's different than pitching, though. That's
starting pitcher has a bad day. It's over.
That's the whole game. Right. Yeah, I don't know. And it's crazy, though, to me that, like, again, Seiya Suzuki has like a 190 weighted runs created plus over the last month or something absurd. Dansby Swanson is like equally absurd, and PCA is still blowing them all away.
Can I say something on the PCA performance that I don't know how this didn't hit me till today, or this morning, when I was kind of just, a lot of times when I'm making the bullets in the morning, I'm just trolling around Fangraphs and just pulling up lists and looking at random things. And, I knew obviously that PCA had just completed a record June, and that you could extend it back into May and create this stretch that's obscene. But what I hadn't really pieced together is, not 3 days earlier, I was talking about how Cubs catching prospect Owen Ayers, who is a pop-up guy, very limited pro experience, which is why and he's a great defensive catcher. So we're still on him, even though he's 25, he's a AA, because he sort of has transformed himself as a prospect. And I noticed and mentioned that he had something obscene, like a 230 weighted runs created plus over a full month at AA, that's bonkers. I mean, that is just, to do that over a full month is bonkers. Okay. And then it hit me today as I'm looking at these. So PCA over 5 weeks, not just a month, or 5 weeks. By the way, he's a year younger than Owen Ayers, right, and he's in the big leagues, and he has the same kind of number over a 5-week stretch in the big leagues as a younger player, who, by the way, also is like the best defensive center fielder in baseball. There's no, what actually, let's pause on that for a second. I know this is not where we were going, but I'm curious.
Go for it.
How I've seen so many ways to think about how good PCA has been over this stretch or this season, whatever you want to do. I'm curious what your favorite, not factoid, although it can be, but your favorite way of thinking about just how good he is.
Oh, sure. Actually, I was kind of pulling it up because, I'll say that the fun thing that I saw was OptaStats tweeted. I'm gonna say something after this, but there's only 3 players in MLB history to have the following stats in a month: a 375 batting average, 775 slug, 80 total bases, 15 walks, 10 homers, and 5 stolen bases. The other 2 are Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. That is how good he's been. But here's the thing I'm thinking, and I'm going to start with showing a split and then talk about where I'm going with that. So PCA's first 68 plate appearances of the season, he slashed 203, 239, 266. So a 36 weighted runs created plus. There's a lot of actual good numbers in here still, but obviously that's not good. his most recent 310 plate appearances. So this is going back to April 14th, the start of the Cubs' first 10-game winning streak, which is my favorite start of PCA cutoff because it coincided with the Cubs starting to win, the offense starting to heat up, but also it's going back to the technically first half of April. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Over that stretch, he is slashing 307, 403, 587, a 172 rate of runs created plus with a strikeout rate under 25% and a walk rate over 11.5%. So this is what my favorite factoid is I was thinking in my head and had tweeted this, that at some point PCA is going to go a whole season slashing 300, 400, 500, but he's approaching 300, 400, 600 over 310 plate appearances. Like, what is the limit for this guy? And I will take it one step further because I don't know if you saw this. I wrote up what's changed about PCA, and obviously we all know that he's chasing a lot less often, right? That's like kind of the big narrative of this stretch, and it's absolutely true. He's chasing. His O swing rate is just like a straight down graph if you start from the beginning of the year to now. But what I find really interesting, and it took the data, it's like a perfect example of what we try to do, is you see something in the data and you need to provide the context behind it with your eyes to like kind of synthesize an actual narrative that might be forming. So before I went and wrote up the most recent PCA, like, hey, he's a superstar, but here's what's exciting about it. And it was mostly about the O swing rate. I started noting that his zone contact rate was going up, but his zone swing rate was actually down a little bit. And on the surface, you might go like, oh, well, that doesn't feel like a good thing. But there was this pitch, I think it was in the Brewers series, it might've been the Padres, where PCA, it was before a hit. And there was like it was like a slider curveball at the top of the zone, kind of, and he just watched it. And the pitch came through and it was a called strike. And he was kind of like, okay, yeah, that landed in there, but it wasn't the pitch I wanted. And like 2 pitches later, he laced the single into left field and it extended the inning. So it was right before Mason Miller might have come in, I think. So it must have been the Padres. And I was just thinking about that when I saw his zone swing rate go down, boy, this isn't a guy who's just not swinging at balls anymore. This is a guy who's starting to pick which strikes he does want to swing at. It is like the final boss battle for a hitter to tackle is to not even be an automatic swing because it's a strike. I mean, he's got enough confidence to let strikes go by because his contact rate is up and his O swing rate is down. So now he could become selectively aggressive, in a way that is really limited to the greatest hitters in the game.
Yes.
And so that was marrying the stats with the visual like confirmation of like, he wasn't pissed. He didn't swing on purpose.
Yeah. He was probably pissed. Like, he's like, damn, that's a strike. I don't want it. Kind of sucks that you got me on like a strike that I'm not going to swing at no matter what. It's like he compressed 10 years of player development into a year and a half, where you see, a lot of times, the aging curve is cruel. But we see for a lot of the best hitters, not the super elite, but just like the really, really good hitters, their plate discipline gets a lot better as they get into 32, 33, 34, because they've just seen a lot. They've seen so many different types of pitchers. They've experienced those things, and they develop this skill, exactly what you're describing, that, hey, if I'm swinging at everything, including all strikes, I'm not going to succeed, especially as I get older. Okay. Because I'm going to lose some of that athleticism, some of that swing strength. And so both intentionally, your discipline is going to improve because you know that you need that for part of your game, but then also it just becomes a byproduct of experience. And the super elite hitters, as Michael's describing, are guys who get there while they still have their peak athleticism.
Exactly.
And their ability to really destroy the ball. And for that to be PCA, like, whatever, we'll get there when we get there over a much larger horizon of evaluation. I'm not going to turn even the last year into a referendum on his entire career, but I think that nobody would have projected or expected PCA to become this type of hitter. I'll be generous and say so early in his career, but I think there are a lot of us who thought, he has a certain style. Craig Counsell even said things to this effect, and Jed Hoyer has too, back months ago now, but that, he's got a certain style where he's going to swing a lot. He is going to really like those high pitches, and he's going to miss a lot of them. He's going to miss hit a lot of them, but that's just going to be part of his game. It means he won't strike out a ton because he's making a lot of early contact. No, he won't take a lot of walks either because, again, early contact, but he'll get his pitches. He'll do his damage. He'll be a, league average hitter or a little bit better and a great defender, and that's a valuable player. I just don't think anybody was thinking he could so quickly internalize and then execute in games this concept that Michael's describing, which is not all strikes are created equal. You have to know what you can do damage with that'll matter over the course of a full season. Like, yeah, you might you might have some bad games because of this approach, but over a full season, you're going to do a lot more damage with this approach. And you need to have confidence in yourself to hit with 2 strikes. That's a big part of it that I think a lot of young guys don't have, is that they know they're going to be on their B swing by the time 2 strikes comes along, and they're like, I don't want to be there. I want to really, generate. So they just get a little too aggressive earlier on. And
well, I was just going to say to your athleticism point, PCA's swing speed, bat speed is up 2.1 miles per hour this year to borderline elite, 74.8 miles per hour.
To that point too, by the way, these development steps that we're talking about, because of the way pitchers attack you, a lot easier if you can get there. Like, you'd much rather work on developing the skill when you do have that peak athleticism than when you are aging, physically declining, and pitchers can try to abuse you because they know that you can't do as much damage. And so, that's to me has been the most hard, in a good way, hard to square part of what we've seen the last 2 months, because it's not just that PCA is putting up monster numbers. He did that last year for a 2-month stretch. He was doing it. The difference is how he's doing it this year. It isn't even that he didn't earn it last year, but he was sort of a really boomer bust guy last year.
Yeah. The amount he's earning it this year is significantly more. And again, it's not that he didn't earn it last year or even set aside the second half where it kind of fell apart. It's a completely different player. It's just not the same thing. And again, I was just like, his bat speed is up 2 miles an hour. His fast swing rate has almost doubled. And what's funny is 75 miles per hour is the fast swing cutoff. So that's the percentage of competitive swings. So he's almost averaging fast swing on his competitive swings, which is an absurd thing to do. Not necessary, not required, because like we've seen guys with lower bat speeds and lower exit velocities succeed. Well, but like if it's all things equal, if you're not going to strike out, you're going to take your walks, then you want 100% fast swing. Like
if a guy's doing that and he's striking out 30% of the time, walking 4% of the time, and hitting for a little bit of power, it's like, hey, maybe that aggressive A swing is not for you as often as you are taking
exactly.
it. Like, I ain't saying shit to PCA right now. Like, man,
it is incredible. And the fact that he's doing it as the leadoff hitter, it's just also so fun. So here's the last thing I think we could say on him for now is he's played 87 games so far this year. We're a little bit more than that for the season. He has 19 homers, 21 stolen bases. So he is more likely than not going to be 2020 before the All-Star break, which puts 30-30 well within grasp again. And the only other Cubs player to ever go 30-30 was Sammy Sosa, and he did it twice. So PCA could reasonably do it twice. And then on top of that, this is the fun part. He's already been worth 5.3 F4, Fangraph's version of WAR. Last year, total 5.4.
Yeah.
So, it's, I don't know, man.
Let me wrap. I'm going to wrap it with my favorite bit of context, and it's WAR related. I saw, I forget who tweeted it, but in the month of June, so this even sets aside, PCA had another great day yesterday, July 1st, by the way. So he's on his way. He had a 3.1 WAR in June. Now, we all just know enough instinctively to know, wait a minute, that's like a pretty good season for a lot of players. And he did it in a month. That must be really high. And indeed, it's the largest month any player has had in 3 years. Any player in 3 years. Okay. And the bit about this that I love is that who was that player 3 years ago who had a month worth at least 3 WAR was Shohei Ohtani. And how did he do it? Well, he was a stud at the plate. And at that time, he was pitching extremely well. That was the only way in the last 3 years that a player could be worth 3 WAR in a month is by being a superstar bat and a superstar pitcher. And PCA just did it as a position player. That's, to me, screams how aggressively valuable and good he was in June. And frankly, the fact that it's even worth a conversation that PCA may wind up in the MVP talks at the end of this year, in a year where Shohei isn't just pitching and hitting again. He's pitching like a Cy Young level pitcher. The fact that it's even a conversation is, as good as it gets.
Just so we're clear, because yes, exactly, I agree with that. PCA is at 5.3 WAR for the year. Shohei Ohtani combined is at 5.7. Now, don't get me wrong. Ohtani is the MVP. What he's doing.
If they tied, you'd still say Ohtani's the more valuable player.
So PCA is behind and Ohtani gets the tiebreaker, let's say, right? But it used to be like PCA is the best player in baseball by WAR. I'm not saying the best player by WAR. Well, except for Ohtani when you combine pitching and hitting.
Asterisk.
We are closely approaching. You could just say PCA has been the most like it's close. Yeah. It is within 0.4 WAR. Put it this way. Ohtani and PCA are closer than PCA is to Bobby Witt Jr., who is in second.
Yeah.
So you see what I'm saying? Like it is, that is
right now there's an island.
Absurd.
There's an island and PCA and Ohtani are on that island.
Yeah. And then there's a gap. And then, it's awesome. He is so good. And it's just so nice to not also be carried by him. I'll say that as one last final nod to the rest of the group. It's like when Suzuki and Swanson and Carson Kelly has come through a few times. Hap's having a weird year, but it's still the same numbers. And he's got 17 homers before the break. Like
Busch has gotten really hot, which makes a huge difference.
Busch is having a real weird year. And this actually is a perfect transition to what I want to talk about in the next topic. So let's talk about Busch for a second. He's walking a ton and getting on base, but the slug has been like non-existent. And it's a bit of a disappointment. Still valuable. Offensively alone, still valuable. Defensively, I think he's taken, honestly, another step forward. I think his defense at first base has exceeded my expectations, even in the bull case. I think he's just a great defender over there. Maybe not like he has picked balls well, but maybe he doesn't have the stretch and split of Anthony Rizzo, like where you just like you throw it in his general direction. Rizzo is going to
someone
get the
who
ball.
Grew up playing first base for 20 years. Yeah.
But I will say Busch has like the instincts when he's playing back of like a third baseman. Like it is genuinely like he's making diving stops that I don't think every good first baseman is making. So really quickly talk about Busch, but I'm going to use that then as our transition. Do you have any take on his lack of power or anything?
So one thing I wanted to say that I feel like gets a little lost in, I don't know, how good he was last year and how good a lot of guys around him have been is that, Busch isn't just, it's probably unfair for me to say he's been hot lately. Really, if you go back to where he had that 0 for 38 streak or whatever it was back in April. So, once he got off that schneid, it was with that pinch hit nothing burger in Pittsburgh. I remember that. And people were like, okay, finally he can turn it on. He has since then. So this is April 12th. He's at 258, 394, 443 with a 138 weighted runs created plus. Now Michael's right. The power has not been what you would expect from his profile, although put a pin in that. 38% or 38% better than league average and one of the best offensive first basemen in baseball again. So pretty hard to overstate how valuable he still is, even on a team where he does get not as noticed and where his numbers are dragged down by that initial stretch, which still counts, although the Cubs won most of those games. So take that.
Yeah, you know what? He's slugging a little bit higher than I thought over that.
Well,
period.
Here's the pin that I was going to say about the nature of his power. So Busch his power reminds me a lot of Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant. The way we talked about how they would get there in a different way than someone like PCA who, swings out of shoes and absolutely obliterates the ball. Michael Busch's power is very loft oriented. And so I think it's subject to a couple things. Way more sensitive to weather, way more sensitive to the home run to fly ball rate. Like you're going to need to hit a lot of home runs if you're going to generate a lot of power with that style. And I think there were just stretches where he wasn't hitting home runs, and I'd have to, go back through that and see a little bit more, but we can see he's only hit about a third of the homers that he did last year in half the games. So,
Yeah.
We know that the homers haven't been as
and this most recent stretch that you're talking about, he just hit 2 homers. So it's like a kind cut off too.
For sure.
Whatever. But I think he's good, and I'm happy to have him playing first. It's just like, boy, at the end of last season, it kind of looked like he was clicking into a new gear. And I guess he's been back there for most of the year. It hasn't quite felt like that.
We'll see where he is by the end of the year. And because it is true, like his barrel rate's way down, his launch angle is down. I think his exit velocity is way down. Like all those things are true. And we should keep in mind that this is not a young guy. He's not old or anything, but like in terms of our context for being a pre-arbitration guy, he's going to turn 29 this fall. And so,
that's what
who knows?
Kind of just hoped this was going to be like a big, kind of like Nico, frankly. It felt like at the end of last year, Nico and Busch were like playing on a different level offensively relative to each of themselves.
Sure.
And then it
could be because that was their peak, 28.
Yeah, that could have been it.
And we would only know in time. And a great thing for both of those guys in terms of aging is they're both in their own way disciplined hitters. Like they both have reached, in terms of their approach at the plate, they are the version of themselves that they could sort of max out to be. It's different than the PCA conversation where it was pretty clear that there was a better version of what he could be doing. It was just a question of whether he could ever actually get there in 10 years, let alone in a year and a half.
Well, speaking of Michael Busch, and this is the transition I wanted to do, there was an interesting trade rumor from Katie Wu at The Athletic. I don't know if you saw this one about the Dodgers' intentions.
I did. And I found it annoying, but please proceed.
Yeah. No, I'm actually like, I'm going to be even more genuine here than I was intending to be now that I know you've seen it. I don't even have a particularly strong take on it. I was like, I really want to hear what Brett.
Say what it is for those who. Okay.
But I really want to hear your opinion and take on it because I like your, I don't know, I like your spin on these sorts of topics where there's like something just beyond the obvious that needs to be addressed. So to set the stage, just remember a couple years ago when the Cubs acquired Michael Busch was still a prospect, technically speaking, in the Dodger system. He was just aging out. They used like every single one of his option years and kept him in the system because he was blocked, at DH by Ohtani, at first base by Freddie Freeman, and at third base by Max Muncy.
And at second base by Mookie Betts.
And so they had to trade him. But what they did is they didn't have, they traded him to the Cubs for 2 prospects who were very legitimate prospects, still rising up the leaderboards, Zaire Hope and Jackson Ferris. Whatever. Okay. So it was like a prospect for prospect trade. Obviously that trade wound up working out really well, honestly, for both sides. The Dodgers have 2 great prospects who still have value, whether they haven't contributed yet at the big league level, but they haven't needed them to, and they could go and trade them for part of a package for School Bowl, this deadline. They still have positive value. For the Cubs, they got an immediate contributor, an everyday starter at first base, whom, as we've discussed, is plenty good. Anyway, all that setting up, the Dodgers are apparently interested in doing something similar again this deadline, according to Katie Wu. Now, that is apparently excluding their top outfield prospect, DePaula, but they want to trade out from some of their outfield prospect depth for prospect depth in a different position group. Okay. I want to hear what your take is on that, but I also want to know if you think that there's any version of a Cubs deal that, like, do we have a position group where we can actually trade from this and it might make some sense to
do the same thing that the Dodgers
with the Dodgers,
like a swap. You're saying.
Can we do it again with them?
Yeah,
maybe in reverse.
I think that part for me is easy, and it comes down to one of these outfield because it's apparently the outfield is where the Dodgers want to deal from.
Outfield.
If one of these guys, the Cubs are like, oh, we're desperate to get Hope back, or we really love Mike Sirota, whatever. It would come down to that as opposed to the Cubs having a system that's like depleted of outfielders, healthy on young pitchers. And so like there's a marriage that makes sense like it did the last time around. Because in the Cubs case, I think they have a pretty significant load of compelling outfield prospects where that fit is less clear unless you got a guy who's going to be a day one starter next year, because we know the Cubs will have those two open spots in the outfield. Circling back to the broader question. So the reason I find this annoying, so this is obviously the Dodgers want this out there. It's coming at re-rank time right ahead of the draft. The latest pipeline ranking has them with 9 top 100 prospects. I'm sure it's true that these are good prospects. We've seen, the Dodgers run a good organization, but how many former tip-top Dodgers prospects have broken through in Major League Baseball in the last 10 years? It's a short list.
Yeah, they have a lot of hype and a lot
very short list for an organization that annually has 7+ top 100 prospects. Okay. We as Cubs fans probably have a skewed perspective because Michael Busch did live into justifying being a top 100 prospect, but a whole lot of the other guys that the Dodgers have traded or tried to promote and didn't work out have not. And there is a part of me.
I mean, you remember Gavin Lux? Gavin Lux was the most super duper prospect. Super duper, not just the top 100, not the top one prospect in baseball right now, but like the best prospect that we've seen.
Yes. And the Dodgers, we tried to incorporate him, and then we only couldn't because of this and this. And then they trade him, and we've seen that several times. And I'm not alleging anything nefarious on the part of rankings services, because these lists are not that dissimilar from each other in terms of there being 6, 7, 8 top 100 Dodgers prospects. What wouldn't surprise me is if, in addition to being good at making trades and good at developing players and drafting and all this, I think maybe the Dodgers have a pretty good spin department too.
It's like Oscar nomination season. Like you have to go on an Oscar a
roadshow, and I think they are pretty good somehow, somewhere behind the scenes.
That's like arguably a competitive advantage. Like
it 100% is, because for one thing, even if you assume that the other 29 organizations are perfect at evaluating players in other organizations and never need external lists or anything, never care about that whatsoever, it still makes it easier to sell deals to their fans, because they can say, oh, we just got another top 100 prospect. So teams love dealing with the Dodgers for these kinds of things. Some organizations.
I mean, I get what you're saying.
Broadly, that's why this kind of story annoys me, because it's like it comes in tandem with re-rank, where it's like, there's 9 top 100s. 4 of them are outfielders. They can't do anything with that. We've got to trade them for more prospects. Now, separate that from philosophically. I think the Dodgers are geniuses for doing it. Do it. If there's teams that are willing to make those swaps and you can keep the base of talent in your organization strong, keep doing it. There's no reason not to keep doing it. The Michael Busch trade was a perfect example where what did they want? 2 super young, super high upside prospects.
It's like they got 2 draft picks, like, or something, because they were, you know what I mean? It was just like,
yes,
it was such
exactly.
it could have not worked out, but it did for them.
I think, if it's me though, I'm certainly leery about what outfield prospects the Dodgers don't want, that they've self-evaluated aren't going to contribute enough in the big leagues on an aging roster. By the way, like, this is not, we think of the Dodgers as this, never ending behemoth, but like, go through their roster spot by spot. They're aging. There is a cliff coming for that group in terms of performance. Now, will they paper over it with more money? Can they, find other ways to supplement? Of course they will. We know they will. But mostly that's got to come internally for any organization. That's what happens, is a guy who's got 5 years left on his deal but gets hurt or fades. Young guy beats him out, and then you're fine. We see the Braves do that all the time. And so I would be a little leery about which outfield prospects the Dodgers are like suddenly willing to trade for lottery ticket prospects. Now, circling back to the Cubs, I don't see a great fit between those two. Again, caveat being, we don't know. Maybe Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins have like desperately wanted Mike Sirota for 2 years.
Maybe DePaula is available. I would take it.
And that's different, of course. Like he's off limits because he's, of course, top 5 prospect that I don't think there's any shenanigans there. I think people have been on him for a long time.
322, 419, 563 as a 21-year-old in Double-A.
He's justified.
That's good.
But I get more curious about when and why the Cubs can never pull this kind of thing off. Now it's rare. I guess we shouldn't talk about it like there's 10 orgs out there doing this. There's not. These kinds of traits, even the Dodgers have done it maybe 3 times. It's not like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
But it is so attractive conceptually that you've got talent that doesn't quite fit for the state of your roster and where that player is and where they need to be. And you simply transform that value into different values. Same, but just different. Longer term, you punt it out further. In the Cubs case, what it would be is trade, a positional guy for like 2 super young pitchers that they can try to work with.
Well, now that Connolly Early is hurt, Jed Hoyer will be sure to acquire him.
There you go.
So as a similar transition, speaking of prospect rankings, Josiah Hartshorn has
no shenanigans there. Shenanigans there.
I wrote up the MLB pipeline ranking, and he had one of the highest jumps of any player on the list. He moved up 19 spots, but it was still not particularly high. It was in the back third of the list.
Yeah.
And Jefferson Rojas was still ahead of him, which, when you look at Rojas this season, it's actually like, no, he's still having a great year.
He's a stud. Man, I was ranting with a friend of mine recently about this very point. Like, if he were in the Dodgers system, that's a top 20 prospect in baseball, and we are hearing about him constantly. I'm just saying. I know that sounds. I know it sounds bitter, but it's true. I know that it's true.
But in Baseball America's most recent update, which Jacob Zanola, who's been doing a great job. I really just anyone who's listening to this, he's doing such an awesome job. Really, really happy and proud of him. Covering Cub stuff, part-time for us this summer. Josiah Hartshorn is ranked 29th in baseball. That is a meteoric, the definition of helium, like as big of a jump as you can get. And not unlike when we see an offensive performance in the big leagues change. And we're like, since this date, he's been this much better. And when that coincides with, a mechanical change or whatever, you feel more confident about it. Hartshorn isn't just like some random 6th rounder that is blowing up. He's a guy that was a high school player who was committed to college, and the Cubs gave a record-breaking deal to get him to forego that commitment
with health questions, which I say, I hope people don't take that as like what is it? But just that is only to say other teams were maybe a little more scared to give him the kind of money it was going to take to sign.
I mean, that is we've talked about this too. It is so clear to me that the Cubs decided that their competitive advantage is the highest upside guy with an injury, because you can get more talent potentially if things break your way. It is 100%, 100%.
Or newer converts to a position,
or newer converts,
limited experience, but they take that chance.
It's so obvious. Cade Horton was like the first one where it was like, oh, I see. They're kind of like, but like Ethan Conrad is another example. There's just been a bunch.
Caleb Wing was the other big money high schooler who he'd only been pitching for like a year.
And so Hartshorn though is just having such an insane season that it is genuinely not even remotely out of the question that in his first full professional year as a 19-year-old, he could probably get to Double-A before the end of the season.
Yeah.
That's not a lock. It's not a guarantee. Like the Cubs might choose to slow play him, and maybe they start him out at Double-A next year and hope he goes Double-A, Triple-A next year, right? Like maybe but I bet he does get to Double-A at the end of this year, gets a little something to work on, starts back out there next year. And that is absurd. He is if he finishes this season strong, he's already gotten his top 30, but if he finishes this season strong, he'll be a top 10 prospect in baseball, because the upside overall talent and then age to level thing is always on one side of the equation. And that tends to be more important, I think. Like where it's like his actual talent, the scouts, what they evaluate of him, whatever. And then the other side is like production, right? That's where it's like, okay, maybe you're producing a ton, but if you don't have the things that scouts and teams are loving under the hood, then that production doesn't carry you as far as it maybe should.
Yeah.
He has both right now.
Yes.
He has all the projection, talent, youth to level, and all the production that comes along with the top level prospect. So I do not think it's crazy that if he finishes moderately strong, he's a top 10 prospect in baseball. And that makes him, in my opinion, 100% untouchable, short of a player that shouldn't be available becomes available. Like Juan Soto has 3.5 years remaining. I'm not saying this Juan Soto. I'm saying from our years ago, like some just 24-year-old superstar that someone doesn't want to pay anymore. Okay, fine. We could talk about that.
It's funny that you mentioned Soto in that context, because if I remember correctly, at that time, the Padres included James Wood in that deal. And he was, I want to say, age, level, performance, that kind of stuff was very similar to where Hartshorn is right now. I mean, the best I can offer in terms of what we're seeing from him so far is the making his pro debut after being a high school draft pick the year before, and as a teenager, blowing away full season ball, then getting to high A, blowing that away. And then if he were to get to double A, those are the kinds of paths that you notice that are a major story in other organizations. Like, I'm a prospect nerd. I'd see that and I'd be like, whoa, that's a very serious guy. And that is not something we have really experienced in a long time as Cubs fans. What I mean is, we had a great set of prospects, of course, that led to the World Series in 2016. But for almost across the board on them, you were talking about first round picks. You were talking about college players, experienced. Mm-hmm. You were talking about guys with a pedigree of, like, who were known to be, these should be future big leaguers who are putting up huge numbers in the minor leagues and should contribute to a big league team. It's just different when it's a high school pick that you overpay to get in the 6th round, and he shows up and he's just humbling, way more experienced pitching that he's with wood bats. He's never seen that. He's just doing things that he's never had to do before. And he's doing it at a level that, that is going to justify, I think.
There's only one prospect from that group that did anything close, and that's Addison Russell, who they acquired.
And even he was a first round pick, right? Like, he was
but setting that aside, he was 11th overall, but he was, at double A at 20 and then up at the big leagues the next year. So it's like, but like everyone else, absolutely. I mean, honestly, Chris Bryant has given us the best crutch ever, because anytime anyone is like kind of doing okay at the big league level, like Matt Shaw or something, I'll be like, by the way, Chris Bryant was at double A at this age, just so we're clear.
Just so you're clear. Because reasons. And so I think the last thing I would say on Hartshorn is, and I want people to hear how I'm presenting this cautiously. I think because aging curves are different for different players, Mike Trout peaked at 22. I'm not comparing Hartshorn to Mike Trout, but I am saying, because sometimes guys are at their best at a young, especially in today's game, at a much younger age, I do think you at least have to put yourself in a position, if you're the Cubs, to leave open the possibility that he's in the big leagues at some point next year, contributing as a starter in a corner outfield spot. And that's likely going to mean he needs to get to double A this year, just so that he hopefully, in a weird way, can struggle and then take that in the offseason.
You love that.
And then
you're right.
And then you evaluate him in the spring, and you're like, oh, he's ready for AAA out of the gate in the spring. I could totally see that. Yeah. And then you're thinking about, okay, are we wasting some of this impact? Is this a guy who could impact us
I mean, listen, they
sooner
seem
rather
to
than
change
later.
their MO with Moises Ballesteros. They obviously he went back down, and I think that they did what was necessary, but they gave him a shot this year.
Yeah.
They gave
Yep.
him like a full on, you can try to be this young, and like I have all the faith in the world in Ballesteros going forward. I really do. I don't care. Like I think he's going to be fine and a good hitter. I just
Yeah.
and on top of everything, I will also say, gosh, I'm just going off on a tangent, but I had these fun Cubs conversations lately because everyone's in a better mood that we actually talk about the team that we love instead of just hating. Talking about like the streakiness of different players and how I think in theory, you know, Nico Horner and Alex Bregman are sort of meant to be the counterbalance to some of that because they're like high contact guys. Bregman walks, Nico rarely strikes out, kind of meant to like even out the Seiya Suzuki's and Ian Happs of the world. I actually think Moises Ballesteros is eventually intended to fill a similar role and that he's going to like not strike out a ton. He'll walk, he'll hit line drives and doubles and not be so feast or famine on the home run ball. Like I think he's meant to be another one of those. But that's off the tangent of Josiah, who is, yeah, I mean, as exciting of a prospect as we've had in a long time. I'd say on the pitching side, did Cade Horton ever did he get to the level of hype at his peak prospect status that Hartshorn has now or will have at the end of the year?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like, who was the last? It's not best prospect. It's like who?
No,
because this is going to happen. You're right. In the offseason, Hartshorn's going to be getting a ton of national attention. Like he's going to explode. Yeah, there was when Cade had made his pro debut, and I think he finished the year in his full season debut at AA pitching in the playoffs.
He's also a college pitcher though.
But he's a college pitcher, but limited experience and on the younger side too. Yeah, people were questioning, is he the best right-handed pitching prospect in baseball? Then he got hurt right out of the gate at AAA the next year and whatever. But no, I can't. We'd have to go back to that group, the Schwarber, Bryant, Baez group, to find a similarly hyped prospect. Is what my gut says we're going to be doing this offseason. And
I will say again, I want to guess. I was writing up the MLB pipeline thing, and I was like, yeah, Hartshorn probably overtook Rojas, but then you go and look at Rojas. This is like a 20-year-old shortstop crushing the ball at AA.
Yeah,
Hartshorn is a first baseman, corner outfielder crushing the ball at high A. Like Rojas might deserve some additional attention. Those are two great prospects the Cubs have.
And experience matters. Rojas has a ton more pro experience. That can be a differentiator. But again, to Michael's point, he's like a year older than, it's not, they aren't
a year older at the whatever. Everyone, I've seen this quote attributed a dozen different ways, but like AA does to me feel like the first real test after pro debut.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, okay, let's see if you could play some actual pitchers.
Yeah, we saw it last year with Jefferson Rojas. He got the early bump to AA, and his contact quality went down because pitchers started taking advantage of him. But I loved it because then he went in the offseason. He shows up to spring training, and it's like he has done some things. He has to figure things out, and then he sent it back to AA, and he's raking.
Honestly, if the Cubs are able to acquire impact starting pitching at this deadline without trading only two prospects I can keep, I'm keeping Rojas and Hartshorn, and everyone else can be had. And I love a lot of the other prospects. Like,
it's not like we're saying go trade Jackson Wiggins or but
actually I just saw Patrick Mooney has a article out about the Cubs pitching plans, and they said that they are considering him for the second half of the season. So that'll be interesting.
In a weird way, we're late in the pod, so I'm not going to go. But in a weird way, I almost wonder if his injury made it certainly not less likely that he comes up, but potentially because of the way they're thinking about how much he has to give this year, the bullets, the intensity over how many innings, etc. They might. I could see an argument where you'd be like, you know what, we got to kind of pause the long starter development thing and just like give him some burst outings, and maybe he comes up.
Well, especially given the needs of the Cubs team this year. But I could see that argument. I could also see an argument for calling it on this podcast. This has been episode 69 of the Bleacher Nation Cubs podcast. That was a professional transition from your host, Michael Cerami, and co-host Brett Taylor. This podcast is brought to you by Ankin Law, 312-6 million injury law made personal. Thank you to them for letting us keep doing this. Cubs are having a great time lately, guys. It's a lot of fun. So just enjoy it. We all saw how brutally miserable it can be when the shoe is on the other foot. So I'm just choosing to think they're the greatest team ever. And if at some point the Brewers would like to lose a single freaking game, that'd be nice too. But they don't. They never lose. And I hate them. And that
leave it with that. Hate the Brewers.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Bye.